Hello. Welcome to the Empower Series podcast. My name is Clifton Johnson, and I want to say hello to all of my viewers in the United States and around the world. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is really dear to my heart. And at the very end, I'm going to tell you who this show is dedicated to. But it's going to be on caregivers. This is a caregiver's lifeline. You probably know, if it's not you, you probably know of somebody in your family that is being taken care of by a family member or someone because they cannot take care of themselves. And I think caregivers is the true example of godly love. You know, we're all in this world to do something of value. And the most important thing we're here to do is to love, to give, to serve, and to add value to someone or something. And caregivers they are the ones on the front line. So this show is about caregivers, and we're here with a guest. She's an author of a book called The Caregivers Financial Blueprint. Her name is Angela Willis. Angela is an attendee of the Empower Series workshops, and I met her just last weekend in person. We talked, and we really got to know each other. She's also a founder of a nonprofit that I'm going to give her an opportunity to talk about. But more importantly, she became a caregiver at 34 years old of both of her parents. And I talked to her about that, and I really feel like she has a story that can be a lifeline to other caregivers and to raise the attention and the spotlight on the plight of caregivers so that they can have access to resources and know that they're not alone. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce you, our Empower Series community, to Angela Willis. Angela, thank you for being a member of the Empower Series podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so honored.
Well, here's the thing. I know you're very busy because you're also a real estate agent. Like I said, you run a nonprofit. And as we talked about this, you did kind of squeeze us in. So I just want to tell you that I truly appreciate you spending a portion of your life to pour into the Empower Series community and really give a platform and a spotlight on caregivers. Because I know that you have your own personal story, and you mentioned that in your book, but you also talked about the challenges that caregivers face, not just financially, but just to balance everything that's going on in their life, in addition to taking over the responsibilities of caring for somebody else who's going through different types of ailments where they can't care for themselves. So I just want to thank you again for being bold enough to be transparent with your story and share with us some resources, right? To let people know that they're truly not alone. So thank you for that.
And again, you're welcome, more than welcome, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, here's what I would like to do. I know, just give some shout out. My mother and father passed away early, I would say, when I was in my 20s. And I haven't had the experience of having elderly parents and being in the situation as an adult to figure out how I got to reprioritize everything going on in my life to take care of my parents as they've taken care of me when I was being raised. But I have observed that with my friends and with my family. Like I think of my best college buddy who had cancer, prostate cancer, was cared for by his youngest sister, Tracy, up in Seattle, Washington. So much love out to you, Tracy, and your family. But she's also caring for her mother and father right now. So those are just in my circle of friends that has happened. And I know that, there's many of my cousins who've taken care of their parents. So much love to Carletta and Krista, her daughter, who cared for my aunt Cora, who recently passed away. And so it's happening to where as we get older, and even if we have children, we find that as we're preparing for our retirement and being able to being empty nesters, we sometimes find that we have to take care of our parents. And I know that that's something that you weren't planning on doing, but that happened to you at the age of 34. Tell me a little bit about that, what you were going through, and how that was a shock to you, and how you had to reprioritize all of the priorities you had in your life.
Sure. So my parents had me when they were in their 40s. And I grew up with parents that were older than some of my classmates' parents. So um, when I graduated from high school and went to college, you're right. I was feeling like, okay, it's time for me to be independent and live my life. And so life happens, and I ended up moving back home.
Mhm.
And it wasn't long after that when my mother was first diagnosed with dementia. And not long after that, my father was diagnosed with dementia. And so the priorities did shift. And um, I had to actually put my parents kind of before, well, my life started to evolve around my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so social life became less. And had a real estate, I have a real estate business. The real estate business kind of took a back burner as my mother's health declined. And so I was being at home, I inherited the responsibility of taking care of their day to day as well as managing the finances. And so um, that went on. And then up until I got to a point where my welfare was at stake and I was getting mentally, emotionally overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to figure out a way where I could recruit more help. I needed a support system. And unfortunately, back then at the time, I did not get as much support as I needed from family and friends. So I had to do what I had to do. And I decided to, as I mentioned before, reach out to those who specialized in elder care and who had experiences in legal and financial planning and nutrition. And so what happened was um, we, through my nonprofit, I decided to launch a mental health wellness symposium called the Cost of Caregiving, Alzheimer's and Caregivers Financial Health Symposium. And so that was in 2017. We did it from 2017 up until 2020, and then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
But in the middle of that, or in the midst of that time frame, it helped kind of stabilize some things because my parents' assets was depleting
Yeah.
due to the cost of care, and so having that symposium, bringing in reinforcement, it really did. It helped us a whole lot. It helped with the bleeding.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say. I like to call it. It helped with keeping my parents' finances from depleting so fast. And so, yeah, it came at a time that it couldn't come at a better time for us. And so now, as you see, we have, I wrote a book about it,
Mm-hmm.
and included in the book all of the information that was spoken about and was presented at the cost of the Cost of Caregiving Symposium in the book, so it can be helpful to other caregivers who are challenged, going through different challenges as I have been going through. And so it's the purpose of it is to be, bring more awareness and to provide more insight into resources and to, to bring more, bring things to light, things that, us as caregivers may not have thought about or looked into.
Yeah. Well, I just want to commend you on a couple of things. There is a time where I was looking for inspiration, right? And what most people can find is there's inspiration all around us, which are ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things. Like when you were faced with your mother's health and you having to reprioritize your life, and that was just something that was blindsided you. You had to deal with that. So not only did you deal with just the emotional aspect of it, you had to deal with the financial aspect of it. You had to deal with the fact that you felt alone and not and needing a team and not having resources or family and friends that could help you. So as you sought that out, you not only did that, but you took the time to put in a book, you to shine more light on it and really take your experiences and share that with the world so that other people will know that they're not alone and they can get some resources and not go through all of the challenges that you went through, right? You can't eliminate all of the challenges, but at least you
Right.
can take your experience and share it with other people. So that in and of itself is inspirational, and that's why I'm so appreciative that you've taken the time to be on the podcast. I do want to share some things because you talked about statistics or shedding light. So I ran across some statistics, so I'm going to just read them out to you. And you probably know these off the bat, like the back of your hands, because you lived it. But the out of pocket cost. So the average out of pocket cost for spending by caregivers on an annual basis, and this might be dated, is $7,200. But when you look at caregivers who are caring for family members who have some form of dementia, it's $9,000 a year. And then we look at loss of income. Caregivers can lose over $300,000 in wages and retirement benefits over their lifetime due to caregiving responsibilities, like you were saying. Increased risk of poverty. Families providing long-term care are at a higher risk of poverty compared to non-caregiving families. Over 11 million adults in the United States provide unpaid care for someone with dementia. That represents 9% of all caregivers in the United States. And when you look at the hours of care, in 2023, dementia caregivers provided an estimated of 18.4 billion hours of unpaid care. And the average, and this averages to about 31 hours per week for caregiving. And the duration of care usually lasts nearly 1 in 3 family caregivers for individuals with Alzheimer's, if that makes any sense what I just said, related to dementia, provide caregiving for 4 years, basically. The duration is 4 years. And you provided caregiving for your mother for
14 years.
14 years. And your father is you're still caring for your father right
Right.
now, right?
Yeah.
So do you have siblings?
I have siblings.
Okay. And you said that the bulk of the responsibility fell on you because of proximity, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so when you look at other family members, you might have family members that are in the same city, not necessarily in the same house, but if they're in a different state, the first decision is, can siblings come together and provide some relief for the primary person who's there on the front line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually a challenge. That creates some kind of family stress as well, doesn't it?
It can, because the dynamics change. Everybody has a busy life, and so you have to cut time out.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, some some people have children, so they have to take care of the kids, and then try to figure out how to help take care of the parents. So it does put a little bit more strain or stress on the family on how to balance that dynamic.
Yeah. Now we're going to go over some solutions. We're not just going to talk about the challenges, but I do want to give some space and some time to identify the challenges. You talked about what you noticed was that your personal life was affected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only your personal life, your social life, but then also I would say the stress, emotional stress, the mental stress, and then also probably physically in addition to financially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all around. Some of the emotional and mental challenges of caregivers, depression and anxiety. Caregivers are twice as likely to develop depression and anxiety compared to non-caregivers. You have stress and burnout. Between 40 to 70% of caregivers experience clinically significant depression, anxiety, or burnout. Emotional distress. 60% of caregivers rate emotional stress of caregiving as high or very high. Stress and coordination. 70% of dementia caregivers report that coordinating care is stressful, and 66% have difficulty finding resources and support like you did. So what would when you look at people who are dealing with this, what are some of your learnings or one of the biggest learnings that you've taken away? And we'll go into some more specific things, but what's the biggest thing that you say you've learned from your experience that you want to share with other people who are going through this?
Well, there was so many, and there's just so many, because it was a trial and error type of situation for me. As you mentioned, back when my mother was diagnosed, there was a lot of research around Alzheimer's, the disease, but there wasn't a whole lot of content out there about how to support the caregivers, or how caregivers can prevent from getting stressed out and burnout. So I had to actually learn just hands on.
Yeah.
And and yeah, you really making me think you got me thinking.
Okay.
You have me thinking, because like I had to reach way back, because there wasn't a lot of programs back then for us. There was research, but there wasn't a lot of programs for the caregivers. And I often think that because we were considered not as relevant, in my opinion, we weren't considered, what we did as caregivers wasn't really, it wasn't really considered to be that important. And so now that we have a lot of people who are being diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, they're seeing firsthand the stress of it all, and trying to balance, having, a family, having kids, and now you got to take care of mom and dad. We got to figure it out. And so, what's, one of the biggest, what was the question? Takeaways?
So you're right. So before you answer that question, because I know you said you had to get some time to this so much, right? But you mentioned something. You mentioned, parents caring for their kids. So whether their kids are in high school or transitioning from high school to college.
The sandwich generation.
Yeah, the sandwich. They still taking care of kids, and then they find that their parents are needing some assistance too. So to your point, it's called the sandwich generation, right? That's another big stress factor, and we'll talk a little bit about that. What I'm going to do is go through some sections in your book and really give you some opportunity to go deep on some of the things that you feel will help someone who's going through this and not knowing where to go. But my question was, overall, what is your message for people who are going through this? I know one of the messages you shared with me is that realize that you're not alone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. One of the biggest messages would be, you're not alone. No one should go through this journey alone. And another thing I would say is get your wishes made. Make known your wishes to your family. I mean, even if you haven't been diagnosed with anything, just now is the time to, if you haven't gotten your house in order, as they say in my church, if you haven't gotten your house in order, start doing it now. Start preparing now. It's just so important, for the family members to have that conversation. And maybe it will make it a little bit easier when everybody is just, having a gathering, get together. I'll just put a scenario out there, say a Sunday, having a Sunday meal, and the conversation just comes up, about what if something happened to me, what would I want? Right. Just a conversation around the table, having a meal and having a conversation about what would your wishes be. If something happened to you, it doesn't have to necessarily be about that meeting where you've been given a diagnosis or something, a terminal diagnosis, and now you got to have a meeting. But I'm just saying,
let's not wait for that.
Right. Let's just, now is the time to just talk about it when we're healthy.
Well, I'll tell you what. So we're talking to somebody out there, right? This is speaking to somebody. It should be speaking to all of us. Because I'll tell you, even personally with me, I'm a financial advisor. And as a financial advisor, I help clients get their estate planning together. And that's one aspect of things. And that's a difficult conversation. People put it off for a lot of different reasons. But even after you have all of your documents together, there are other things that you need to have in place, not just your will, but things like your power of attorney, your medical power of attorney. And you got to think of it to where, like for myself, what happens if on my way home, I get into a car accident and I become disabled or incapacitated for several months? So who can step into my place? Is my life in order to where someone can step in and pick up where I've left off in keeping my bills paid and just taking care of my day-to-day living responsibilities? And the tough thing is that, what if it's nobody? Because my son is in his third year of getting his master's in architecture and design in Boston. My daughter is an artist living in Dallas, but she is, really trying to figure out a way for her to, continue to live her passion and make enough money to support her lifestyle, not to pause everything and to figure out how to take care of dad.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if you're in that situation where you don't have anybody to pull upon, you might want to just go ahead and put this off and not think about it, right? But to your point, the difficult thing is to get your life in order. And that's a tough call. That's a tough task, right? Because if something does happen, then you're thrown into a situation like you were thrown into at 34. Now, your mother was experiencing some form of dementia. What about your father at that time? Was he okay, or when did he come down with some type of need for assisted?
Yeah, a few years later, he was diagnosed. And with my mother, initially, it was a gradual decline for her. It wasn't like a rapid decline. Some people decline gradually, some decline very quickly. And in her case, she declined gradually. So she was still independent and able to do some things for herself. She was still able to actually make some decisions for herself. But as time went on, yeah, her mental cognition started to decline. And so that's when I had to be more hands-on with her. But initially, when she was diagnosed, she was still able to make some decisions. And so, and I guess you could say that that's the difference between, or I want to make this, want to make it known that some people are short-term caregivers, some people are long-term caregivers. And so the experiences, I would say, maybe a little bit, everybody's experience with dementia is different, because I've, have heard others say, my loved one had dementia too. And they're like, well, but when I tell my story, they're like, well, my loved one didn't experience what your mom went through. My mother, she really literally fell to pieces. She literally. So, so I want to make a distinction, because some people, when they even hear the word dementia, they may think about, they may attribute it to who their loved one or whoever that's close in their vicinity, and how, they saw them go through it. And I really think, this is just me, in my opinion, is that you may get a different story or version of it from someone who's been a short-term caregiver versus a long-term caregiver. But again, what was your question? Because
Well, I'll just say that you did a good job. So the thing is, everybody's experiences are different, right? And one of the things I want to talk about is your early experiences, because the first thing that you have to deal with is just the diagnosis, right? And then there's a lot of different emotions that are involved with that. There's like denial, possibly, trying to get the doctors to properly diagnose. You talked about that in the book, and then getting the right medication and treatment for it. And then just that whole emotional process that you have to go through, because you also mentioned in the book, when you were first realizing how this was impacting your life, you got a little bit upset about this. And when you mentioned that to your mom looked at you and said, hey, I didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
Right. And then that gave you an epiphany to say, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of emotion through this, right? Even me reading your book and thinking about this brings tears to my eyes. Um, you know, going through the feeling that you went through and going through the feeling that some of the other people have gone through as a caregiver, right? Um, and so that's some tough stuff, and that's real. And so the purpose of this podcast is to bring light on that and to let people know that that there's a lot of people out there who are caring for their loved ones who cannot care for themselves. And it's not necessarily the parent. It could be a spouse, it could be a sibling, and
Mhm.
they're reprioritizing their life.
Yeah.
And when you say, you were mentioning earlier that this wasn't given a lot of attention, when you look at what we're called to do, the most selfless thing to do is to really put other people's interests first and to care for them, whether it's your spouse, your wife, whoever that is, and also people who are in the industry, that's their job. And like you mentioned before in the book, that before you had people who are really dedicated to the career. But now that it's happening so much and it's blowing up, you have companies that are popping up all over the place, and you're getting part-time workers, and the quality of workers are not as high as they used to be, right?
Mm-mm.
So that's also a challenge, trying to
It's
find a
very
balance,
challenging.
right? Right. And so I want to bring up some other statistics, and then we're going to attack each one of these with your book and the solutions, right? But before we get into the solutions, we were talking about, for caregivers, this can be detrimental for their health. So this is why you were realizing how much this was impacting you, and you were feeling a certain kind of way, right? So physically, the decline in physical health of caregivers, 40% of caregivers report that their caregiving situation has caused their own health to suffer. Increased chronic condition. Caregivers have a higher incident of chronic conditions like heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, sleep problem, getting some sleep, right? Because you were doing 4 jobs back at the time, right? 40% of caregivers report sleep disturbances. And then socially, what you were talking about is social isolation. 67% of caregivers feel socially isolated. Caregivers spend significant less time in leisure and social activities compared to non-caregivers. And then the relationship strain. Caregiving can negatively impact relationships with family members, friends, um, and this happens for over 50% of caregivers. So what I want to do in this part of our podcast is to really share that caregiving, where a person is really caring for somebody else, and that is a true act of love, selfless love, unconditional love. It is coming at a price, and the price is more than just financial. That's a big part of it, but another price of it is inside,
Mm-hmm.
internally, stress, emotion, physical. It's just so much, and that's a high price to pay. And so my love and my prayers go out to you, and they go out to everyone who's out there who's caring for someone else who cannot care for themselves. And even though you feel like you're alone, it's more than just knowing that you're not alone, right? We want to give you some solutions and some resources, and that's what you decided to do when you started your symposium, right?
Right.
Bringing a number of different professionals who are in this space together to let people who are going through this find resources. So let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about some of that stuff, right?
Right.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go. So you have a section in your book where you talked about um, what can be done to offset the the emotional and physical trauma that a caregiver is going through. But before we get into that, talk about the symposium and what type of companies come together and what kind of services they provide. Let's talk about legal first.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, back in 2017, I decided to launch the Cost of Caregiving Financial. I'll just keep it abbreviated because it's a long name, but yeah, it's Cost of Caregiving. I'll say Alzheimer's and Caregivers Financial Health Symposium. And so, um, and we brought in just whoever we could get in that provided healthcare services, support services for caregivers. We brought in Alzheimer's Association. We had the Dallas Area Agency on Aging. We had a Friend's Place. I think we had PC Home Health. We had a number of different organizations to come and speak. We had I believe it was attorney, elder law. We had elder law attorneys come. One time we had legal aid of North Texas to come and speak. We had, various, yeah, um, elder law attorneys come. We had, a person that spoke on financial services to come, nutrition. We had even a yoga instructor that was very helpful. I would love to bring that back. So yeah, and you know, everyone that I could, think of that I could get to come on that day, I had there.
And so, from a legal perspective, the things that you can do, depending on where you are in the care and the person's condition,
Hmm.
mental condition or capacity, is really getting the first thing you had to do, I guess, at some point is get the authority to make decisions on behalf of your mother or who you're caring for, right? If they're still of sound mind, they can sign for themselves. If they're not, then it's the legal process that you have to go through to be assigned as their guardian, right? Did you go through that guardianship process with your
No, we
parents?
didn't do the guardianship. We just did. We did the power of attorney. We
Okay,
just did that while they're alive, because after they pass, of course, the power of attorney doesn't.
go and come into play.
Yeah, it those powers cease. So my parents, we we just did the power of attorney while they were alive to handle the financial, the medical piece.
And there's several ways to deal with that. So let's just stay on that for a little bit. So the standard documents is the durable power of attorney, which allows you to make financial decisions and transactions on a person as an agent representing them. Then you have the medical power of attorney that allows doctors to really allow you to make medical decisions on behalf of the person who you're caring for. But then on the financial power of attorney, some people who don't have that usually, they put their names on joint accounts,
Hmm.
or in some cases they call and they if it's a daughter and it's a mother, the daughter says that, I am the mother, right? They answer all of the security questions. I'm not advocating that, but those are some things that people do just to get around not having the document itself. But having the document is the best way to do it. So putting name on accounts or having that document is critically important, and getting that before there's a loss of capacity or mental capacity is easier than doing it afterwards where you have to get the court involved
Oh, for
or
sure.
something like that, right?
Mhm.
And so the other thing is just your day-to-day, being able to pay the bills. So having organizing your life in a way to where someone who steps in knows what are all of your bills, when are they due, are they paid automatically, or are they written from a check? I know that I had to step in one time and help my mother-in-law pay for her bills at some point in time. And that was done where she was used to doing everything manually.
Mhm.
So I had to set things up for automatic payment because she was in a different state. So organizing your life before something like that happens so that someone can come in and easily figure that out instead of going through all of your bills and your mail is something to do. And the attorneys who come together during your event is really there to help answer those kind of questions for people who are
Yes.
experiencing that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then the other thing you talked about was just getting services. And you mentioned a number of other agencies that the human service, what is the
It was Dallas Area Agency on Aging.
on aging, which has
Yeah.
changed their name now, right?
They is it Greater Dallas? What is it
It's
now?
but yeah, we'll get the right names. All of the links and everything that what we're talking about is going to be underneath the video. But those government agencies and really dealing with that, you deal with a lot of red tape. So having going to an event like that and being able to talk to a person face to face
Mhm.
instead of calling and being on held is critically important, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, do you have one scheduled for 2025 yet? One of those events?
Not yet. So what I did this year was actually to make it actually, I think it's even better. What we did this year was create an online course with all of the information that we've gathered from our past symposiums, and this is honestly there's it's free. They can go to the website. I can give it to you at the end.
Well, give it to me now, and then it's going to be on the bottom. The link to it's going to be on the bottom of the video.
Okay, so they can go to www.r2, the number 2, enterprise.org, and they can click on the course tab. And that would take you to our online course. It's accessible 24/7, and people can just actually navigate the course and take whatever pertains to them, because the course is surrounded, or it surrounds the book. It's based upon the book that I've written, and it's loaded with actually more resources than my book actually has. We partnered with UTD, which is University of Texas at Dallas, and so the students there actually dove a little bit further in finding support services, and it's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
I kid you not, Clifton. They really did dig deep, and they even found much more services than what's actually in the book. So I would highly recommend people getting the book and doing the online course.
So how can they get the book, right? So here's the book right here, right?
They can get the book. It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
It's available on Barnes and Noble, Spark Ingram, Walmart. If you are if you're on a very, very strict budget, you can actually request the book at your public library, and they will start circulating the book. So it's accessible. It's accessible. We make sure that the book only has has less than 100 pages, because we know people have busy lives.
Right.
So it's user friendly, and I think it's a great book.
So I'm going to go through some of the important steps for self-care, right? Because all of this is self-care, because a caregiver gives so much for other people and put other people's interests first. They can definitely not put the mask on themselves first, right? So the first thing you mentioned is about physical self-care, and really the basics: getting enough sleep, exercising, and eating. It's easier said than done.
For sure.
What were some of the things that you did to ensure that you were at least getting more, or putting more attention to your sleep, your exercise, and your nutrition, even though you may not have been 100% perfect? But what are some things that you can share with people who are thinking, what else should I be doing? Right. Let me add something else to the list.
Fortunately for me, I was raised up eating 3 meals a day, and junk food just did not fly well with me. Like, I literally would crash. So I've always eaten, I feel like, I don't want to say healthy, but I've eaten a nutritious meal. I've always had to eat a pretty nutritious meal. I got to have my meat and vegetables. Like, now I've gotten a little bit, tried to scale back on the red meats, but I'm still have I consider a pretty healthy diet, where I'm making sure I do get some proper nutrition. So that's always been a big thing for me. I can feel it when I'm not eating properly. So I will say one of the things too that I tried to make sure of, I always tried to make sure that I had the right energy around my parents, because I knew they were feeding off of me. So spiritually, I always try to make sure I fed myself spiritually. I played spiritual music around them as well. I can tell you now that even with my dad, even though he's, less verbal now, whenever I turn on spiritual music, and I tell the caregivers, turn on some spiritual music, it seems to really bring him a lot, really lifts his spirit, and you can see it in his eyes. And so that's very big with me, my spirituality. You mentioned, I know we're talking about the physical,
Yeah.
but you talk about exercise. I will admit that exercise, I was very, did have a pretty good regimen with exercise up until probably COVID. But but before that, I did have a regimen as well with making sure I hit the gym because my background is in track. So I've been, what you could say, very try to be cognizant of, my body and my, um, yeah, just my physique and things of that nature. So, um,
So
but
yeah,
yeah,
it's really it's easier said than done, like you said. But when eating, there's little tricks for myself. I found myself gaining weight and was at 300 pounds, which
really.
was like crazy. And so it's simply a matter of just not giving it attention. And so I realized that when you go out to eat, the serving sizes are for two people. And so I always cut it in half. When I'm eating with someone else, we order one entree and we split it. I've used for a period of time this food service called Factor.
Okay.
Pretty expensive, but Factor, portion sizes are on point. I'm doing intermediate fasting, which means that I'm not eating before 11 a.m. and I'm not eating after 7 p.m. But in between that, I'm eating whatever I want. So I'm not the kind of person that oh, you got to eat this or follow some strict diet. I'm cutting out sugars, I'm cutting out starches,
Yeah.
and I'm eating smaller portions, and I'm eating more vegetables.
Mhm.
So there's little things you can do like that from a diet perspective. And on exercise, I've kidded myself to doing some kind of exercise at least 30 minutes a day, because I can watch a 30-minute show or
Right.
30 minutes of something that's like not beneficial at all.
Mhm.
But even if I can't do that, I've done like 15 minutes or 5 minutes of meditation or yoga or stretching.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't have to be big, going to the gym. You can do something that is just moving your body or
Right.
stretching, fitting that in. So whether it's, and then sleep, I tell you what, I'm not consistent with this, but I want to average getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep. I know your book says 7 to 9, which is perfect. It's needed. So my goal is to go to bed at 10 and wake up at 5.
That's good.
Right, that's my goal. I don't always go to bed at 10. At least I'm in the bed. Probably I'm doing some other stuff, reading. But my goal is to be in the bed and get at least 7 hours of like rest time and sleep. And so whatever that might be for a person, just cut out staying, going to bed 30 minutes earlier, sleeping a little bit 30 minutes later. So there's little tricks you can do. The other thing that you mentioned here is for emotional care. And I want to talk about those. You said journaling, being mindful and meditating and seeking support. So journaling, I think, is very important. There's a lot of apps you can create that can remind you to just stop and put down your thoughts. Meditating, being quiet and being mindful, as well as just what was it? It was seeking support.
Mhm.
What did you do in those areas to really care for yourself emotionally?
Right. So I love to journal.
Hmm.
Even the book has a space for people who want to journal their thoughts down. It's been therapeutic for me. I'm big on journaling. So as you mentioned, meditating, that's something that I've decided to pick up actually here recently. Um, because because my stress load is still pretty high.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just thinking too that, sometimes when it comes to getting respite care, and where the caregiver gets a break from taking care of, that person, the loved one or whoever it is. Sometimes even when we're away, our minds is still going and racing because, you're just thinking about, it's, it could be a number of different things, did I make sure this was right before I left? Did I make sure that was done? Did I remember to tell the caregiver to do, X, Y, Z? Our minds are still going, and so that's not rest either. You know what I mean? Um, so it it's funny you mentioned the meditation thing because that's what I decided to take back up. And for me, I feel like that has really helped me with just trying to calm my mind because yeah, we can even be, it's like you mentioned, even going to bed, you can lay in bed, but still your mind is still going, especially for us who are entrepreneurs, we're steadily thinking about, what we need to do, or what we should be doing the next day and things like that. So I definitely feel like trying to have those systems in place, like you mentioned, and having an app to remind you it's very important, because it's so easy to get caught up into what we're doing, and so yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned that, those apps are out there to help us, because, and we have the smartwatches too now and everything like that. So I'm helpful for technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, as we go through this list, it's like as a caregiver, you already have a full list. And we're adding to it by saying, okay, get some rest, journal, meditate. It's like, trust me, it's like, it may seem like a lot. You don't have to do it all at once. You can just do a little bit, just do a little bit. One of the things that I'm doing now, because I feel like, we all have 24 hours a day and it slips away, is I'm doing like a time audit. What am I doing? Am I doing things that are like um, empowering me and refueling me when I'm resting? And am I getting the most important things done, or I'm putting things off? It's like just being more mindful of how we're spending this precious time that we have. But when it comes to seeking support, if someone's out there and they're thinking, but I don't have any support, where do I go? Are there support groups? Are there, do you have a resource for yourself? Can people reach out to you and get directed? How do you respond to people who feel like they just don't have any support? They don't know where to go to get it?
Yeah. So I don't have a support group per se, but I will say we do have a YouTube channel. And so on that channel, you'll find a number of different avenues for, um, if you're trying to relieve stress. I have actually guided meditations on that channel for that. We do need to update it where it's a little bit more refined, but however, it's still effective, because I actually just used it myself not too long ago. So, but yeah, we have a YouTube channel as well, and there's some prayer and guided meditations on there. There's also some of our past symposiums as well on there
Okay,
that
good.
people can tap into, and they can replay it.
And then what's your YouTube channel?
Sure. So it's youtube.com/road TOECOEMPWMT. And I'll
The
share the
link will be
link.
the link will be under the video. But so it's road to what's this?
So they can type actually Road to Economic Empowerment,
Okay.
and it should pull up.
Okay.
Or just type Angela Willis Road to Economic, and it should pull up
Okay.
in the search bar.
Okay, great. And then some of the other areas for support you have is mental health, or mental self-care, having hobbies, learning, relaxation techniques, and the importance of just creating barrier or boundaries, for yourself, the B word.
Saying no.
So what? Saying no. Yeah.
Saying no.
So talk about that, and then we're gonna kind of wrap things up. But I want you to maybe share some, again, your learnings and what you've done to create more balance in your life.
So I'm a work in progress. I will say that.
Right.
Yeah. I'm definitely a work in progress. And and as I mentioned, some of the devices that I use, honestly, I'm big on prayer. I am a very I'm big on faith. So it's been, I will say, out of all of what I've been through, it has been nobody but God that's kept me sane, that's um, kept me from harming myself or harming someone, um, because the stress is
Is real.
very real.
It's real.
Yeah, it's very real. Um, and so, and one thing I am very grateful for is having actually colleagues now, coworkers who can relate to my story, who are going through the same thing, dealing with having a business, dealing with the same things in their family, taking care of parents, et cetera, et cetera. And so that has been very great, very beneficial for me.
Mhm.
And so yeah, and feeling not feeling judged when I'm sharing, how I'm feeling. So having a listening ear, a person who's just totally understanding. That's been, for me, very, helpful. So if you can find an outlet somewhere, if it's just watching comedy, um, do that. Find a friend or friends, who can, who won't judge you, who, will just let you, express how you're feeling. Because they've been there or they're dealing with it as well. So, if you can find that kind of support system, that's awesome. But it's like you said, finding people, it can be a challenge too, finding the right support groups. So, but I would say a place to start is start with the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I really would, and then you can work your way out. But I hope that helped. I don't know.
Let me tell you something right now. We are helping because there's somebody watching this episode, right? And this is meant for you. I keep going back to where it really resonates with me. First off, here's the book, The Caregiver's Financial Blueprint. You can get it on Amazon.
Amazon.
Just Google the name and it'll come up. Angela Willis. This is a good start. It has a tremendous amount of resources. There's some also things in here about how to save money, how to use your home as a source of income, how to create your niche. So there's a lot of resources here. So if you don't have any resource, you don't know where to go, or you need more resources, this book is one of them, right? Also, there are links beneath the video that you can go to that will have also additional resources. Reach out. You're not alone. Go to your YouTube, Angela's YouTube channel. That link is below as well. So again, you are not alone. But one of the things that you shared in the book that really speaks to me is, again, is when you were really frustrated about your predicament and you were expressing that to your mom, and your mom response was, I didn't choose this. And so Dennis Kimbrough says this, you didn't choose to be here. You were chosen. So the positions that we're in, especially caregivers, yeah, you may not have chosen to do this, or you may think you're choosing to care because no other siblings or family is going to be around. You were chosen, right? God chose you to be where you are to care for one of his angels. And that really speaks to me. And I am so touched and there for you when it comes to people who make sacrifices to care for other people. I think when you look at, all that we chase after, money, job, all this other stuff, and then relationships, we're looking for somebody who loves us for who we are. And we tend to be, wearing our best coat and everything. But at the end of the day, we really want to be accepted for who we are, the good and the bad. And when we find ourselves not able to care for ourselves and we're 100% dependent upon somebody else, we want to be around people who love us enough to not just put us in the corner and say, oh, they'll be all right. You know what I mean? And caregivers care for people. And so we did this episode not to talk about all of the exciting things in life, but the realness of life. And the fact that at some point, we all know that we're not going to be here. At some point, we're not going to wake up. So that's a reality, but we don't know when that's going to happen and how that's going to happen. If it's going to happen soon, or are we going to kind of lose the ability to care for ourselves? And we need other people. So we're not in this thing alone. We need other people. So I just have a tremendous amount of love, appreciation, and gratitude for caregivers. And I wanted to give you an opportunity and a platform to reach a broader community to let people know that you're not alone. And if you care for people, if you care for caregivers, and you have somebody who's doing that around you, be there for them. Be a break. do what you can to support them because the support is needed. So thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say to all the caregivers, short term or long term, I want to commend and applaud you all too for what you're doing, and the sacrifice that you're making, be it big or small or however you look at it. But I also want to just say, um, you are um, you are loved as well. You are special too, and it takes special people to do what we do.
Yeah.
So
Most
thank
definitely.
you, Clifton, for having me.
Get out of here. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I want to thank you for sticking in with us and watching the Empower Series podcast. Also, stay connected. If there's any information or questions you have, definitely put it in the chat, live chat, or put it in the comment section. We'll definitely respond to that. Connect with us. So go to we're on our YouTube channel, so subscribe. If you want more information, email me at thrive@empowerseries.com, or you can go to our website, www.empowerseries.com. Give us your contact information. We'll keep you updated on upcoming events. You can click on survey in the top right-hand corner and give us some feedback. If you want to make a donation, you can click on donate in the top left-hand corner, or you can text give or donate to 214-225-6337. That's 214-225-6337. Angela has a nonprofit as well. The links for that nonprofit is going to be below in the description of the video. So again, if you want to give, if you have a heart for giving, and you want to help caregivers, there's a link again down there. So you do have a nonprofit that does that connects people with resources for caregivers, but your nonprofit also has financial independence and financial wealth symposium as well. Talk a little bit about that as we say I go by. And you can look at one of these. This over here.
Sure. So we actually we did start out as offering financial education and financial literacy, and so we do those classes or trainings through partnerships. And so it's called the Road to Economic Empowerment Financial Health Financial Education Symposium. And be on the lookout. We're actually updating it. We're going to start doing some Master Your Mindset classes in terms of finances as well. You stay tuned. Keep going to our website at www.r2eeenterprise.org. And if you want us to put you on our mailing list, just click the contact us box and we'll put you on our mailing.
There you go. So you got to stay connected. If you're looking for resources to help you take that next step to achieve your goal, you've got it right here. So don't let this be the end. Let it be the beginning. I want to thank you again for joining us. Take this and share it with somebody else. Don't keep it alone. There's somebody out there that you can bless and you can help by sharing this video with them. So until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive. Thank you.